Hello and welcome to Central Reach's Learn training platform. This is going to be a training for certified behavior technicians on the components of Learn. In order to understand Learn, first you need to know how to navigate to the particular module. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to look at the top bar, horizontal bar, and find the program notebook. Looks like a book, and that is where Learn is housed. In order to understand Learn, there are two main components. And the two main components are found in the clinical area of Learn. And those two components are learning trees and sessions. You can access learning trees and sessions by doing what I'm doing now, by again clicking on the Learn notebook, clicking on clinical, and then learning trees or sessions. You can also click on the notebook and click Learn, and then this will bring a bigger navigation page where you can also look at learning trees and sessions. So what are learning trees? Learning trees are your actual electronic program notebook. This is where all the programs are housed, all the graphs are housed, all the treatment plan goals, all those different things are housed. So that's why it's important to know about learning trees. For the CBT, the place we'll be spending the most time is with sessions, and sessions are actually your data sheets. So this is where you're going to be recording your data, running your sessions, and things like that. First, we're going to start with a conceptualization of understanding learning trees in Central Reach. This is about understanding how the program notebook, that's usually paper or pencil, transitions to an electronic binder. So actually, the program binders are called learning trees. And when you conceptualize the program notebook and learn the learning trees, we really are talking about trees. So all of your programs, all of your domains and everything are trees and branches and things like that, and everything kind of sprouts out together. So they do use that analogy of trees. So think about it as a cluster of trees, and they're clustered by domain. So typically with a paper pencil program binder, we're going to have just the program level. We'll have a file, we'll have a increased responding rate divider, we'll have theory of mind, and we'll have the program graph, and then behind that we will also have the program, individualized program description. In this conceptualization of Learn, we actually go up one more level and we combine our programs, or individualized programs are categorized by domain. So you can see here we have a behavior domain, and all your behavior programs are going to be in that domain, in that learning tree. So it's a larger tree and branches. So bear with me here as I continue to explain the conceptualization of the learning tree program book. So then we would have another domain like communication, and the domains will depend upon the funding source that your client has. So for example, most funding sources will have these 6 domains plus parent training. Others like Kaiser will have fewer domains, but all of the programs you'll be able to find within those domains. It is important to note that we have a 3-tier system when it comes to learning trees. So again, we talk about the top tier, which is the domain, the communication domain, the behavior domain. And within that domain, there's a second tier, which is the program level. Okay, and then actually within the program level, there is another tier. So let's look more closely into what an actual learning tree, one of these trees, looks like. So again, we have our top tier, which is the domain or social communication. We have our second tier over here, which is the program level, which has action like action ID, emotion ID, flexibility, that kind of thing. And then The third tier within that program are the actual targets or sets. So we have, for this example, eat, sleep, cry is one set for action ID. So let's look at this again a little bit more closely and try to understand that, again, we have a three-tier system, and there are different things to look at and different things to find in each one of the tiers. So right now, we're looking at tier 1, the top level. Remember, that is the domain level, and in Apple language, it is we call that the domain level. And we're going to only be talking about Apple language right now, and then we'll move into Learn language. Tier 2 is where we'll find the program level. So those individualized programs that used to be in paper notebooks that have the SD, the behavior, the consequence, the prompt, the teaching narrative, all those different things will be found at this level. You'll also be able to find the treatment plan goal description as if it were in a treatment plan separately. Tier 3 is what we call at Apple the set level. So that's where in our instructional programs we have sets. So set 1 would be cat, dog, or bird. Now moving on, we want to see the same thing, but we want to look at it in terminology that's new to us. So in the Learn system, Tier 1, which is the domain level, is actually called the long-term goal, but it still is the domain. But in terms of what it's referred to and how you see it in the system, it's referred to as the long-term goal. The domain is the long-term goal, and that is the first tier. The second tier, again, we'll review, it was the program level where you find the program instructions and the goal description. In Learn terms, that's called the short-term goal. And it's the same thing, it means the same thing, it's where you can find the same things. And again, in Apple language, we have Tier 3, which is the set level. Well, Learn calls it the target level, which is not that much different. So it's important to note what the differences are, specifically when it comes to Learn, so you know where to find things. So let's go into Learn and actually take a look at how this is put together. Moving back into Central Reach, we're at our main dashboard, and we're going to have to go back into Learn. So we're going to look for the program notebook in the navigation bar and click on that. Click on Clinical, then click on Learning Trees. And for purposes of our learning and training for these learning trees, we're actually going to be using John Doe's notebook. And we always use FILAs, which means first 2 letters of first name and first 2 letters of last name in order to find the program notebooks. So I will be searching for JODO for John Doe, and in order to open up the notebook. And then once you find it, you click on the notebook to open up the dashboard. On this main dashboard, there are many different things that you can see. And what we're going to be focusing on for the purpose of this training is actually the first column to the left over here where it says Client Programs, Client Treatment Plan Narrative, General Notes. And actually what we're going to be focusing on is where the program notebook lies is Client Programs. Okay? Client Treatment Plan Narrative through assessment, this is where you would actually find the treatment plan for the client, all the different sections of the treatment plan. And then this is general notes for communication for your sessions, which you'll be able to see the functionality of that later. So let's dive into what the program notebook looks like. So I'm going to click on Client Programs. And then, as I mentioned before, there's always a first tier. And that tier is called the long-term goal. The long-term goal is a domain. So we have here, most of the time, they will be these 6 domains plus parent training, behavior, social communication, cognitive, adaptive, motor. And on this level, the long-term goal, or the domain level, there's not much to really analyze or see here. There's no goal description or anything like that because it is simply a domain, but the graph does depict the goal count for the week, the total count, and the count for the week. Where we really want to move into is the second tier. And that's the short-term goal or the program level. So here we have a bunch of programs under the behavior domain. One is flexibility, one's flexibility with object placement. And then there are others that have to do with certain behaviors like aggression, tantruming, and verbal aggression. So remember what we talked about at this level. This is the short-term goal level or the program level. This is where we're going to find the information about the instructional program and the treatment plan goal description. So how do you find that? It's very simple. Over here to the right, and this over here again is a goal count of the weekly count of goals in that short-term goal and the cumulative weekly. So if you want to find the goal description, there is a navigation bar here to the right where you see there are double lines. And if you just click on it, hover over it, it'll say description. So if you click on it, it'll tell you exactly what the program is, and that is the treatment plan goal. And then you'll also see as well that there's a place where you can look at comments, which is something that you'll learn about later in your training. We don't want to be touching edit or add branch. And the other place that's really important to note is the instructional note. This is where we have all the information and directions about how to run the program. So it has the materials, the SD, the response, the consequence. There are 10 major components, and they're all in here. And there's teaching notes, and there's generalization strategies, set ideas, etc. So you can't edit anything here, which is a good thing because we want to make sure that the supervisors have access to that. But this is where you can view it. There's also a place that you can view it in your data sheets, which we will show you later. Now we will move on to our third tier, which is the target or the set tier. So you see here under flexibility, the individualized program or short-term goal level, we have the target level. And notice the difference in the icons. For the long-term goal and the short-term goal, there is a document with a target on it. And with the target level, there's actually a graph with a target on it. This is distinct because if you take a look at the actual graph here, it's actually going to show you what a typical graph looks like in a notebook. This is for the first set, and this has information about that particular goal, and it shows information about baseline, it shows information about intervention and generalization. So let's take a look at another one. So you can see that's percent correct, and you can see here we have baseline, intervention, generalization. It also allows you to have event changes and phase changes. So we have phase changes in between the baseline and intervention stages. And then here we have an event of a client vacation, which we may want to add into that as well. So that will all be seen on your graph, which the full graph is always seen in the program notebook learning tree. Also in your data sheets, you'll be able to see a smaller portion of the graph. So also there is the ability in the target level to manipulate a couple of things. So here we go again to the right to see the vertical navigation bar. And if you hover over any of the icons, you'll see what they mean. And what we're going to focus on mostly here is data history. So anytime we want to look at the history of the data, we need to make changes, we need to edit or delete, we're able to do that. So that's where we would go in and add and change data. So if we made a mistake, whatever the case is, we can go in there and do that. Now, I would only do that with the permission of your supervisor, but we wanted to show you and that is a place that it can be done. Then also there's add data. Sometimes you may not be able to run a session, or you missed a session, or some historical data needs to come back in. Again, only with the permission of your supervisor. You would add data, you would click the add data button. It would tell you what phase it's in, and then you'll be able to basically add the data yourself. Again, this is something we'll go through later and should be only done with the permission of your supervisor. Next, we're going to review the three-tier system of the learning trees and the program binder. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to our main dashboard. And from that dashboard, we're going to navigate to Learn, Clinical, then Learning Trees. And remember, for practice purposes, we're going to look for John Doe, or his Phila, which is Joe Doe. And we're going to search for that. And as soon as it comes up, we're going to open it up. And again, we're going to be focusing on the left column. Now we have the three-tier system that begins within the client programs area. The first tier is called the long-term goal, or the domain. And that's behavior, social communication, cognitive, adaptive, motor, etc. And again, it depends upon your funding source, which domains are going to be present. Within that long-term goal, the second tier is the short-term goal, or the program level. So these are examples. Let's give another example here. Let's go into social communication. There's action ID, animal sounds, answering WH questions. So those are all actual individualized programs. So this is where the individualized instructional note is found, where the treatment plan goal description is found. To find the goal description and the instructional note, remember to move over to the right-hand vertical navigation bar. And the first one, if you just hover over it, it says description, and you click on it, the name of the description of the treatment plan will be right there for your use. Also, you'll see that the instructional note is at the very last one, the clipboard at the bottom, and that's where you find the 10 components of the instructional note, or the individualized program. The third tier is what we call the target, or what we call at Apple, the set. That is where you're going to find those individualized graphs for baseline, intervention, generalization, all that good stuff, phase changes, event changes. And what you're going to want to know again is if you ever have to take a look at adding data or data history, you're going to again go to the right navigation vertical bar. And then if you hover over data history, the clock, that's data history. And that shows the history of the data, and you can delete or edit at any time, again with the approval of your supervisor. And then there's add data, where you're able to add data into the system, whereas typically you do that through your sessions or your data sheet. This is also another way that you can do that. One last thing a certified behavior technician might want to know are the mastery criteria for a particular program. Those are found under the Edit pencil in the right vertical navigation bar. Now keep in mind, I'm showing you the Edit pencil, but if you go in there to look at the mastery criteria, please do not change anything unless under the direction of your supervisor. Most of the time that will be done by either a program manager or a supervisor. But let's take a look at what the mastery criteria look like. So if you scroll down toward the bottom, it'll say data collection details. It'll tell you the data type, which is a score. So for all of our data collection resources, what we're doing is we're putting in a score. We're not doing trial by trial data. We're just adding in a score. So for example, if you had 10 trials and 8 were correct, you would put in a score of 80 as opposed to typing in those 10 trials. And then you would look at the y-axis label, percent correct, the date, all that stuff. And then if you keep going down, it says criteria and prompting settings. And this is where you'll find the baseline criteria, the intervention criteria, the generalization, and maintenance criteria. Again, this is a place where the edit pencil should not be used by the technician, but this is just for informational purposes only to understand where to find the mastery criteria.